The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as Captain Sarah Mitchell stepped out of her quarters, her boots clicking against the concrete pathway. At 28, she had already earned respect among her peers through years of dedicated service and exceptional combat training. Her father, a decorated war veteran, had instilled in her the values of discipline, courage, and unwavering determination from a young age. Sarah's journey to this moment had begun 15 years earlier when she was just 13 years old. Growing up on various military bases around the world, she had witnessed firsthand the challenges and sacrifices that came with serving one's country. Her father, Colonel James Mitchell, had served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 in Iraq, earning numerous commendations for his bravery and leadership. Despite the dangers he faced, he always made time to teach his daughter the fundamentals of self-defense and military tactics. The base where Sarah now served was located in a remote region known for its strategic importance. Surrounded by rugged terrain and bordered by hostile territories, it housed nearly 1,000 soldiers from different branches of the military. The facilities served as a crucial outpost for intelligence gathering and border security operations. Every day brought new challenges, and every soldier understood the gravity of their mission. Sarah had distinguished herself early in her career through her exceptional marksmanship skills and her ability to think quickly under pressure. Her commanding officers had noticed her potential and fast-tracked her through various training programs. She had completed advanced combat courses, specialized in hand-to-hand combat, and earned certifications in multiple weapons systems. Her dedication to physical fitness was legendary among her colleagues, who often found her in the gym before dawn, pushing herself to new limits. The relationship between Sarah and her fellow soldiers was built on mutual respect and trust. She had proven herself countless times during training exercises and real-world missions. Her squad looked up to her not just because of her skills, but because of her unwavering commitment to their safety and success. She had saved lives during a border skirmish 6 months earlier, earning her a commendation and the deep gratitude of her teammates. On this particular morning, Sarah was preparing for what seemed like a routine training exercise. The base commander had announced that all units would participate in a large-scale simulation designed to test their readiness and coordination. Nearly 500 soldiers would be involved in the exercise, making it one of the largest training operations conducted at the base in recent years. The simulation would test everything from individual combat skills to unit-level tactics and communication protocols. As Sarah made her way to the briefing room, she reflected on the path that had brought her to this point. Her decision to join the military had not been taken lightly. Despite her father's initial reservations about his daughter following in his footsteps, he had eventually become her strongest supporter. He understood that Sarah possessed the same drive and determination that had carried him through his own military career. The briefing room was already packed when Sarah arrived. Soldiers from different units filled the seats, their faces reflecting a mixture of anticipation and focus. The atmosphere was professional but relaxed, as everyone understood that today's exercise was meant to be challenging but safe. The base commander, General Patricia Hayes, stood at the front of the room, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone present. General Hayes began the briefing by outlining the objectives of the training exercise. The soldiers would be divided into 2 main groups, with one side defending a strategic position while the other attempted to capture it. The exercise would test various aspects of military operations, including reconnaissance, tactical movement, defensive positioning, and combat effectiveness. Safety protocols were emphasized, with clear rules of engagement and designated safe zones throughout the training area. Sarah found herself assigned to the defending force, along with approximately 250 other soldiers. Their mission was to hold a fortified position against the attacking force while maintaining communication with command headquarters. The exercise was designed to last for several hours, with multiple phases that would test different aspects of their training and preparedness. As the briefing concluded, Sarah gathered with her assigned team to review their specific roles and responsibilities. She had been designated as a team leader, responsible for coordinating the actions of 12 other soldiers during the exercise. The weight of this responsibility was not lost on her, as she understood that effective leadership could mean the difference between success and failure in both training and real-world situations. The team members assigned to Sarah represented a diverse cross-section of the base's personnel. There were seasoned veterans with years of combat experience, as well as newer recruits who were eager to prove themselves. Among them was Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, a close friend who had served alongside Sarah for over 2 years. His expertise in communications and tactical analysis made him an invaluable asset to the team. Another key member of the team was Corporal Jennifer Washington, a skilled medic whose calm demeanor and quick thinking had saved lives during previous missions. Her presence provided reassurance to the entire team, knowing that she could handle any medical emergencies that might arise during the exercise. The team also included specialists in explosives, reconnaissance, and heavy weapons, creating a well-rounded unit capable of handling various challenges. As the teams prepared to move out to their designated positions, Sarah took a moment to inspect her equipment and weapons. Every piece of gear had been carefully maintained and checked multiple times to ensure reliability and safety during the exercise. Her rifle was loaded with blank ammunition, and all safety protocols were strictly enforced to prevent any accidents during the training operation. The designated training area covered several square miles of rugged terrain, including dense forests, rocky outcroppings, and open fields. The defending force would be positioned in a series of fortified locations that simulated real-world defensive positions. These included bunkers, trenches, and observation posts that provided both cover and fields of fire for the defending soldiers. Sarah's team was assigned to defend a critical choke point along one of the main approaches to the central objective. Their position controlled access to a narrow valley that any attacking force would need to traverse to reach the primary defensive line. The importance of their mission was clear to everyone involved, as failure to hold this position could compromise the entire defensive strategy. As the teams moved into position, Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement about the upcoming exercise. These training operations were essential for maintaining readiness and improving coordination between different units. They also provided valuable opportunities for soldiers to develop their skills and build confidence in their abilities. The weather conditions were ideal for the exercise, with clear skies and moderate temperatures that would allow for extended outdoor operations. The terrain, while challenging, was familiar to most of the soldiers who had trained in the area numerous times before. This familiarity would allow them to focus on tactics and teamwork rather than struggling with unfamiliar environmental conditions. Sarah's father had always emphasized the importance of thorough preparation and attention to detail in military operations. These lessons had served her well throughout her career, and she applied them rigorously as she prepared for the day's exercise. Every aspect of their defensive plan had been carefully considered, from fields of fire to communication protocols to contingency plans for various scenarios. The exercise was scheduled to begin at precisely 1000 hours, giving all units sufficient time to reach their positions and complete final preparations. Sarah used this time to conduct one last review with her team, ensuring that everyone understood their roles and responsibilities. She also established communication protocols and verified that all radio equipment was functioning properly. As the start time approached, Sarah found herself thinking about the broader significance of their training, the skills they were developing and refining during exercises like this one could someday mean the difference between life and death in real combat situations. Every soldier understood this reality, and it added weight and purpose to even the most routine training activities. The base's public address system crackled to life, announcing that the exercise would begin in 10 minutes. Sarah felt her heart rate increase slightly as adrenaline began to flow through her system. Despite the fact that this was only a training exercise, her body and mind were preparing for the challenges ahead with the same intensity that would be required in actual combat. Looking out over the terrain that lay before her team's position, Sarah mentally reviewed the defensive plan one more time. They had established overlapping fields of fire that would allow them to engage any approaching forces effectively. Communication lines with adjacent units had been verified, and contingency plans were in place for various scenarios that might develop during the exercise. The sound of helicopters in the distance indicated that the attacking force was beginning to deploy. Sarah raised her binoculars and scanned the horizon, looking for any signs of movement that might indicate the beginning of the assault. Her team members were positioned at their assigned locations, weapons ready, and eyes focused on their designated sectors of responsibility. As the minutes ticked by, tension began to build among the defending soldiers. Everyone knew that the attacking force would likely begin with reconnaissance efforts designed to identify weaknesses in the defensive positions. These initial probes would be followed by more aggressive actions as the attackers sought to find and exploit any gaps in the defense. Sarah's training and experience had taught her to remain calm and focused during high-stress situations. She controlled her breathing and maintained situational awareness while continuing to scan for any signs of enemy activity. Her team members looked to her for leadership and guidance, and she was determined not to let them down. The radio crackled with reports from various units as the exercise officially began. Scout teams reported movement in several sectors, but no direct contact had been established yet. Sarah knew that this initial phase of the exercise was crucial, as it would set the tone for everything that followed. As she watched and waited for the first signs of contact, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Years of training, dedication, and sacrifice had prepared her for challenges like this one. She was ready to lead her team through whatever obstacles the exercise might present, drawing on the lessons learned from her father and the experiences gained through her own military service. The stage was set for what would become one of the most significant events in Sarah's military career, though she could not have imagined the dramatic turn that the day's events would take. The first reports of enemy movement came through the radio at exactly 10:15. Sarah's earpiece crackled with updates from forward observation posts as they spotted elements of the attacking force beginning to probe the outer perimeter of the defensive positions. The exercise had officially begun, and both sides were now committed to their respective roles in the elaborate training scenario. Sarah adjusted her position behind the reinforced barrier that served as her team's primary defensive position. From this vantage point, she could observe the approaches to their sector while maintaining communication with her team members and higher command. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky, creating sharp contrasts between light and shadow across the rugged terrain that would challenge both attackers and defenders throughout the day. The attacking force had been given specific objectives that required them to penetrate the defensive lines and capture designated targets within a limited time frame. To make the exercise more realistic, they had been provided with detailed intelligence about the defensive positions, though some of this information was intentionally inaccurate to simulate the fog of war that characterizes real combat situations. Sergeant Rodriguez's voice came through Sarah's earpiece as he reported movement approximately 800 meters to their front. Through his high-powered scope, he had identified what appeared to be a reconnaissance team attempting to establish observation positions overlooking their defensive sector. Sarah acknowledged the report and passed the information up the chain of command while simultaneously alerting her team to prepare for potential contact. The rules of engagement for the exercise were clearly defined and strictly enforced. All weapons were loaded with blank ammunition, and every soldier wore special sensors that would register hits and determine casualties based on sophisticated computer algorithms. Safety officers were positioned throughout the training area to monitor compliance with safety protocols and intervene if necessary to prevent accidents or injuries. As the morning progressed, the tempo of activity increased steadily. Radio reports indicated contact between opposing forces in multiple sectors, with the attacking units attempting to identify weaknesses in the defensive line while the defenders worked to maintain their positions and gather intelligence about enemy movements. The exercise was unfolding exactly as planned, with both sides demonstrating the skills and tactics they had developed through months of intensive training. Sarah's team maintained their vigilance as reports of increasing enemy activity filtered through the communication network. The attacking force was clearly building up their strength for a coordinated assault, but the timing and location of their main effort remained unknown. This uncertainty was intentional, designed to test the defenders' ability to remain alert and responsive to changing tactical situations. At 11:30, the first direct contact occurred in Sarah's sector. Corporal Washington spotted movement in a tree line approximately 600 meters away and reported what appeared to be a squad-sized element attempting to advance undercover toward their position. Sarah immediately ordered her team to elevated alert status, while she coordinated with adjacent units to ensure that the suspected enemy movement was not friendly forces operating in an unexpected location. The training exercise had been designed to include various complications and unexpected developments that would test the adaptability and problem-solving skills of all participants. Unknown to most of the soldiers involved, the exercise controllers had introduced several variables that would challenge both the attacking and defending forces in ways they had not anticipated during their preparation phase. One such variable was the presence of Master Sergeant David Thompson among the attacking force. Thompson was a 20-year veteran with extensive combat experience who had volunteered to participate in the exercise despite being scheduled for retirement in just 3 months. His reputation as a tough, no-nonsense soldier was well known throughout the base, and his participation added an element of unpredictability to the attacking force's capabilities. Thompson had been assigned to lead a special infiltration team tasked with identifying and exploiting weaknesses in the defensive perimeter. His team consisted of 8 highly experienced soldiers who specialized in reconnaissance and direct action missions. Their objective was to penetrate the defensive line and gather intelligence that would enable the main attacking force to achieve their objectives more effectively. Unknown to the exercise planners, Thompson had been dealing with personal issues that had affected his judgment and emotional stability in recent weeks. His upcoming retirement had triggered a period of reflection and uncertainty about his future, leading to increased alcohol consumption and a growing sense of frustration with younger soldiers whom he perceived as lacking the dedication and toughness of his generation. These personal struggles had manifested in increasingly aggressive behavior during training exercises and a tendency to push safety boundaries in pursuit of what he considered more realistic training experiences. Several junior soldiers had quietly expressed concerns about Thompson's conduct, but no formal complaints had been filed due to his senior rank and impending retirement. As Thompson's team moved through the dense forest towards Sarah's defensive position, his frustration with the exercise's safety restrictions began to build. He viewed the blank ammunition and sensor systems as unrealistic impediments to proper military training, believing that soldiers needed to experience real danger and stress to develop genuine combat skills. This philosophical disagreement with modern training methods had been growing stronger throughout his final months of service. The terrain between Thompson's position and Sarah's defensive line consisted of thick forest interspersed with rocky outcroppings and small clearings. This environment provided excellent concealment for approaching forces, but also created numerous potential ambush sites that defenders could use to their advantage. Both sides understood the tactical implications of operating in such terrain and had adjusted their plans accordingly. Sarah's team had established observation posts and listening positions throughout their assigned sector, creating a network of early warning capabilities that would alert them to approaching threats. These positions were manned by soldiers equipped with advanced optical devices and communication equipment that allowed them to coordinate their observations and share intelligence in real time. As Thompson's team approached the outer edge of Sarah's defensive zone, they encountered the first of these observation posts. The position was occupied by Private First Class Marcus Johnson, a 20-year-old soldier who had joined the military 18 months earlier. Johnson had been trained to observe and report enemy movements while remaining concealed and avoiding detection by hostile forces. Following proper procedure, Johnson identified the approaching soldiers and attempted to determine their intentions through careful observation. He noted their equipment, formation, and direction of movement while preparing to transmit a detailed report to his team leader. The protocols for this type of situation had been drilled repeatedly during training, and Johnson felt confident in his ability to execute his assigned mission effectively. However, Thompson had noticed subtle signs of the observation post's presence and decided to investigate more closely. His years of experience had taught him to recognize the indicators that revealed hidden positions, even when they were well camouflaged and professionally established. Rather than bypassing the position as his mission parameters suggested, he chose to approach and challenge its occupants directly. This decision represented a significant deviation from the exercise plan and created a situation that had not been anticipated by the safety officers or exercise controllers. Thompson's team was supposed to avoid direct contact with defensive positions during their reconnaissance mission, gathering information through observation rather than close-range encounters with enemy forces. As Thompson approached Johnson's position, his frustration with the exercise's limitations reached a boiling point. He saw an opportunity to demonstrate what he considered proper military tactics and decided to transform the encounter into an impromptu lesson about combat realism. His team members, recognizing his aggressive intentions, began to feel uncomfortable but were reluctant to challenge their senior leader's decisions. The rules of engagement clearly prohibited any physical contact between opposing forces during the exercise, but Thompson had concluded that such restrictions prevented soldiers from learning important lessons about close-quarters combat and the psychological pressure of face-to-face confrontations with enemy forces. His decision to escalate the encounter beyond the established parameters would have far-reaching consequences that none of the participants could have anticipated. Johnson remained in his concealed position as Thompson's team drew closer, following his training to avoid detection while gathering as much intelligence as possible about the approaching soldiers. He was unaware of Thompson's intentions and expected the encounter to follow standard exercise protocols, with any contact being resolved through radio communication with exercise controllers rather than direct physical interaction. The forest around them was quiet except for the natural sounds of wildlife and wind through the trees. Other elements of both the attacking and defending forces were engaged in their own tactical movements throughout the training area, unaware of the developing situation in Sarah's sector. The exercise was proceeding normally in all other areas, with participants following established protocols and safety procedures. Sarah, monitoring the situation from her command position, received Johnson's initial report about the approaching soldiers, but had no indication that anything unusual was developing. The report fit the expected pattern of enemy reconnaissance activities, and she responded according to standard procedures by alerting her team and coordinating with adjacent units to track the movement and prevent any surprises. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would test not only the tactical skills of the soldiers involved, but also their ability to maintain professional conduct under unexpected stress. The careful planning and safety measures that had been put in place for the exercise were about to be severely challenged by human factors that no amount of preparation could have fully anticipated. Thompson's approach toward Johnson's position marked the beginning of a sequence of events that would transform a routine training exercise into a situation requiring all of Sarah's combat skills and leadership abilities. The lessons her father had taught her about staying calm under pressure and protecting those under her command were about to be put to the ultimate test in circumstances she could never have imagined. Thompson emerged from the tree line with deliberate aggression, his face twisted with an expression that immediately alarmed Private Johnson. The Master Sergeant's approach violated every protocol established for the training exercise, and his body language suggested intentions that went far beyond the scope of simulated combat. Johnson's training kicked in as he recognized the potential danger, and he began reaching for his radio to report the unusual situation developing at his position. Before Johnson could complete his transmission, Thompson lunged forward and grabbed the young soldier by his equipment harness. The Master Sergeant's grip was powerful, developed through 2 decades of military training and combat experience. His eyes held an intensity that spoke of something far more serious than a training exercise, and Johnson realized with growing alarm that the situation was spiraling beyond the boundaries of safe military training. Thompson's team members watched in stunned silence as their leader crossed the line from aggressive training into something that resembled actual assault. Several of them exchanged worried glances, understanding that they were witnessing behavior that could result in serious disciplinary action or criminal charges. However, their respect for Thompson's rank and experience created a moment of hesitation that prevented immediate intervention. Johnson attempted to break free from Thompson's grasp, while simultaneously trying to activate his emergency beacon, a safety device that would summon exercise controllers to his location. The beacon was designed specifically for situations where training exercises exceeded safe parameters or when soldiers felt threatened by the actions of other participants. However, Thompson recognized the device and knocked it from Johnson's hand before the signal could be transmitted. The confrontation escalated rapidly as Thompson began shouting accusations at Johnson, claiming that the young soldier's generation lacked the toughness and dedication necessary for effective military service. His words were laced with profanity and personal attacks that reflected deep-seated frustrations about changes in military training and culture. The Master Sergeant's behavior suggested someone who had lost perspective on appropriate conduct and professional boundaries. Sarah's radio crackled with fragmentary transmissions from Johnson's position before communications were abruptly cut off. The incomplete messages contained enough alarming content to immediately capture her attention and trigger her protective instincts toward the soldiers under her command. She attempted to re-establish contact with Johnson while simultaneously moving toward his position to investigate the situation personally. The terrain between Sarah's command position and Johnson's observation post consisted of dense forest with limited visibility and multiple potential hazards. Sarah moved quickly but carefully, drawing on years of training in tactical movement and terrain navigation. Her weapon was ready, though she hoped that whatever situation had developed could be resolved without violence or serious confrontation. As Sarah approached Johnson's position, she could hear Thompson's voice carrying through the forest, though the specific words were difficult to discern at distance. The tone and intensity of his speech clearly indicated a serious situation that required immediate intervention. Sarah's training had taught her to assess threats quickly and respond appropriately to protect soldiers under her command, regardless of the rank or status of potential aggressors. Thompson's assault on Johnson had escalated to physical violence, with the master sergeant using his superior size and strength to overpower the younger soldier. Johnson fought back as best he could, but 20 years of age and 18 months of military training were no match for Thompson's experience and physical conditioning. The situation had clearly moved beyond any reasonable interpretation of training exercise parameters. When Sarah emerged into the clearing where Johnson's observation post was located, she immediately assessed the situation and recognized the serious threat that Thompson posed to her soldier. Her voice cut through the forest air with the authority and confidence that had earned her respect throughout her military career as she ordered Thompson to release Johnson and step back immediately. Thompson turned toward Sarah with surprise and anger, clearly not expecting to be challenged by someone he viewed as inferior in rank and experience. His grip on Johnson remained firm as he began directing his verbal assault towards Sarah, questioning her authority and making inappropriate comments about her fitness for military leadership. The master sergeant's behavior had clearly crossed multiple lines of professional conduct and criminal law. Sarah's response was calm but firm as she repeated her order for Thompson to release Johnson and de-escalate the situation. Her training had taught her to remain composed under pressure while clearly communicating expectations and consequences. She understood that Thompson's behavior represented a serious threat not only to Johnson but potentially to other soldiers in the area, and she was prepared to take whatever action was necessary to protect her people. The master sergeant's response revealed the depth of his psychological instability as he launched into a tirade about military standards and the perceived weakness of younger soldiers. His words became increasingly incoherent and threatening, suggesting someone who had lost touch with reality and professional responsibility. Thompson's team members began backing away from their leader, recognizing that his behavior had crossed into dangerous territory. Sarah assessed her tactical options while maintaining verbal contact with Thompson in an attempt to defuse the situation peacefully. Her position provided good fields of fire and multiple escape routes, while Thompson's location left him exposed and vulnerable to flanking maneuvers. However, her primary concern was ensuring Johnson's safety rather than engaging in combat with an unstable colleague. When Thompson refused to comply with Sarah's repeated orders and instead tightened his grip on Johnson while making increasingly specific threats, Sarah realized that verbal de-escalation was no longer possible. Her military training and personal code of ethics demanded action to protect a soldier under threat, regardless of the potential consequences to her own career or safety. The master sergeant made the fatal mistake of underestimating Sarah's capabilities and resolve when he dismissed her warnings and turned his attention back to Johnson. His years of experience had made him confident in his ability to intimidate younger soldiers, but he failed to recognize that Sarah represented a different category of opponent entirely. Her combination of advanced combat training, physical conditioning, and protective instincts created a formidable adversary. Sarah's initial move was swift and precise, designed to create distance between Thompson and Johnson while establishing tactical advantage for whatever actions might follow. She used her voice command training to distract Thompson while simultaneously repositioning herself to a more advantageous location. The master sergeant's reaction time was slower than expected, possibly due to alcohol consumption or the effects of his emotional instability. Thompson's attempt to maintain control of Johnson while responding to Sarah's movement created the opening she needed to escalate her intervention. Her years of hand-to-hand combat training had taught her to recognize and exploit such opportunities with maximum effectiveness. The techniques she employed were specifically designed for situations where an armed opponent posed an immediate threat to friendly personnel. The confrontation entered a new phase as Thompson released Johnson in order to focus his attention on Sarah, whom he now perceived as the primary threat to his actions. His movement towards Sarah was aggressive and purposeful, suggesting an intention to use physical violence to eliminate her interference. The master sergeant's size advantage and combat experience made him a dangerous opponent, but his emotional state and tactical positioning worked against him. Sarah's response to Thompson's approach demonstrated the effectiveness of her training and the clarity of her tactical thinking under extreme pressure. She maintained distance while verbally warning Thompson about the consequences of continued aggression, providing him with opportunities to de-escalate the situation voluntarily. However, her body positioning and weapon readiness indicated preparation for decisive action if peaceful resolution proved impossible. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath as the confrontation reached a critical moment. Johnson had moved to safety behind cover, but remained close enough to witness the unfolding events and potentially provide assistance if needed. Thompson's team members had withdrawn to a safe distance, uncertain about how to respond to their leader's breakdown and unwilling to become involved in what appeared to be heading towards serious violence. Thompson's final verbal exchange with Sarah revealed the full extent of his psychological deterioration as he made personal threats and challenged her right to interfere with his actions. His words crossed every boundary of professional military conduct and suggested someone who had completely lost perspective on appropriate behavior and legal constraints. The Master Sergeant's approach towards Sarah indicated an intention to use physical force to eliminate what he perceived as opposition to his authority. Sarah's training had prepared her for exactly this type of situation, where the safety of soldiers under her command required immediate and decisive action against a superior-ranking aggressor. Her father's lessons about protecting those who depended on her leadership echoed in her mind as she prepared to face Thompson's assault with whatever force was necessary to ensure Johnson's safety and her own survival. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test every aspect of Sarah's military training and personal character, while demonstrating the consequences of Thompson's career-ending loss of professional control and judgment. That Thompson's charge towards Sarah was fueled by 20 years of combat experience and a dangerous combination of rage and alcohol-impaired judgment. His powerful frame moved with surprising speed through the forest undergrowth, and his hands were already reaching for Sarah's throat as he closed the distance between them. The Master Sergeant's eyes held a wild intensity that spoke of someone who had completely lost control of his actions and judgment. Sarah's response drew upon every hour of combat training she had received throughout her military career. Her father's early lessons about staying calm under pressure merged with advanced martial arts techniques learned through specialized military courses. As Thompson approached, she shifted her weight and prepared to use his momentum and size against him in a defensive maneuver that would determine the outcome of their confrontation. The first contact between them occurred when Thompson's outstretched hands met Sarah's defensive posture. His superior weight and reach gave him an initial advantage, but Sarah's training had taught her to use an opponent's aggression as a weapon against them. She absorbed Thompson's initial assault while positioning herself for a counterattack that would exploit his overextension and emotional instability. Thompson's military training made him a formidable opponent despite his impaired judgment. His hands sought vital points with practiced precision, and his combat experience told him how to use his body weight to maximum advantage in close-quarters fighting. However, his emotional state had compromised his tactical thinking, and his underestimation of Sarah's capabilities created vulnerabilities that she was trained to recognize and exploit. Sarah's first defensive move redirected Thompson's momentum while creating space for her to assess her options and plan her response. Her years of studying various martial arts had taught her to flow between different techniques depending on the specific circumstances of each encounter. Against a larger, stronger opponent like Thompson, her best strategy involved using leverage and precise targeting rather than attempting to match his raw strength. The Master Sergeant's second assault was more measured as his training began to overcome his emotional volatility. He approached Sarah with the systematic aggression of someone who had killed enemies in actual combat situations. His hands moved toward her weapons and equipment while his body positioning suggested an intention to take her to the ground where his weight advantage would become decisive. Sarah recognized Thompson's tactical shift and adjusted her own approach accordingly. Her defensive posture became more dynamic as she prepared to counter his ground fighting techniques with strikes designed to disable his mobility and defensive capabilities. The training she had received in joint manipulation and pressure point attacks provided options for neutralizing larger opponents without relying on superior strength. Thompson's combat experience became evident as he successfully grasped Sarah's equipment harness and began using it to control her movement. His grip was powerful and professionally applied, demonstrating techniques learned through years of military training and real-world application. However, his focus on controlling Sarah's upper body left other targets exposed to her counterattack capabilities. The decisive moment came when Thompson attempted to use his grip on Sarah's harness to throw her to the ground. His technique was sound and would have been effective against most opponents, but Sarah had anticipated this approach and prepared her response accordingly. As Thompson committed his weight and leverage to the throwing motion, Sarah struck with devastating precision at his most vulnerable point. Sarah's counterattack targeted Thompson's left leg just above the knee, where the femur was most exposed to lateral stress. Her strike combined the power of her entire body with precise timing that caught Thompson at the moment when his weight was fully committed to his attack. The impact occurred at exactly the right angle and with sufficient force to create catastrophic damage to the bone structure. The sound of Thompson's femur fracturing was audible throughout the forest clearing, a sharp crack that immediately silenced all other noise in the area. The Master Sergeant's scream of pain and shock echoed through the trees as he collapsed to the ground, his leg bent at an unnatural angle that clearly indicated severe injury. His assault on Sarah ended instantly as his body went into shock from the sudden trauma. Sarah stepped back from Thompson's fallen form while maintaining situational awareness in case other members of his team decided to intervene. However, Thompson's soldiers were staring in stunned disbelief at their leader's condition, clearly recognizing that the confrontation had ended with devastating consequences for the Master Sergeant. The severity of his injury was immediately apparent to everyone present. Thompson's attempts to move or stand were futile as his shattered leg could no longer support any weight. The break was compound, with bone fragments visible through torn fabric and flesh. Blood began pooling beneath his leg as damaged blood vessels released their contents into the surrounding tissue. His face had gone pale with shock, and his breathing became rapid and shallow as his body responded to the severe trauma. Private Johnson emerged from his concealed position to check on Sarah's condition while maintaining distance from the injured Master Sergeant. His training as a soldier included basic first aid, and he could see that Thompson's injury required immediate medical attention to prevent permanent disability or life-threatening complications. The young soldier's hands shook slightly as he reached for his radio to summon medical assistance. Sarah assessed Thompson's condition while considering the tactical and legal implications of what had just occurred. Her use of force had been necessary to protect herself and Johnson from a dangerous assault, but the severity of Thompson's injury would certainly trigger investigations and formal reviews. She began preparing mentally for the challenges that would follow this incident while ensuring that immediate medical needs were addressed. The radio calls for medical assistance brought rapid response from base medical personnel and exercise controllers who had been monitoring communications throughout the training area. The nature of the emergency transmissions immediately alerted command staff that something serious had occurred beyond the scope of normal training activities. Emergency protocols were activated to provide medical care and secure the incident site. Thompson's team members remained in shock as they witnessed their leader's incapacitation and heard his cries of pain. Several of them had combat experience and recognized the severity of his injury, understanding that his military career was likely over regardless of whether he survived the immediate trauma. Their reluctance to intervene during the confrontation now seemed prescient given the outcome. Within minutes, the forest clearing was filled with medical personnel, military police, and senior officers who had been summoned to deal with the unprecedented situation. The training exercise was immediately halted in all sectors as resources were diverted to address the medical emergency and begin preliminary investigations into how the incident had occurred. Sarah cooperated fully with the responding authorities while maintaining her professional composure despite the stress of the situation. Her actions had been necessary and justified, but she understood that proving this would require detailed investigation and potential legal proceedings. Her military training had prepared her for such scenarios, though she had never expected to face them during a routine training exercise. The medical team's initial assessment confirmed the severity of Thompson's injury as they prepared him for emergency transport to the base hospital. The fracture was complex and would require extensive surgical intervention to repair, with no guarantee that full function could be restored to the damaged leg. Thompson's military career was effectively over, regardless of any disciplinary action that might follow the incident. As Thompson was loaded onto a medical stretcher for transport, his consciousness faded in and out due to shock and blood loss. His final words before losing consciousness were directed at Sarah, containing threats and promises of revenge that demonstrated his continued inability to accept responsibility for his actions. These statements were witnessed by multiple personnel and would become part of the official record of the incident. The aftermath of the confrontation left Sarah standing in the forest clearing surrounded by nearly 500 soldiers who had witnessed or heard about the dramatic end to their training exercise. Her actions had protected Private Johnson and neutralized a serious threat, but the cost had been severe injury to a fellow service member. The full implications of this incident would unfold over the days and weeks to follow, testing every aspect of her character and career. The training exercise that had begun as a routine operation to test military readiness had transformed into a real-world demonstration of courage under pressure and the consequences of crossing professional boundaries. Sarah's response to Thompson's assault had been swift, precise, and devastatingly effective, proving that her years of training and preparation had created a soldier capable of protecting others regardless of personal risk or consequences. The hospital corridors buzzed with activity as news of the incident spread throughout the base. Master Sergeant Thompson lay in the intensive care unit, his shattered leg now held together by an intricate network of metal plates, screws, and external stabilizing devices. The surgeons had worked for 7 hours to reconstruct the damage, but even their skilled efforts could not guarantee that he would ever walk normally again. Sarah sat in a sterile waiting room, her uniform still bearing traces of forest debris from the confrontation that had changed everything. Military investigators had questioned her for hours, documenting every detail of the incident while building a comprehensive understanding of how a routine training exercise had escalated into career-ending violence. Her account remained consistent throughout multiple interviews, reflecting the clarity of her memory and the justification of her actions. The investigation revealed troubling details about Thompson's recent behavior and psychological state that painted a picture of a soldier struggling with personal demons and professional frustrations. Fellow soldiers came forward with accounts of increasingly erratic behavior, excessive drinking, and inappropriate comments about younger service members. The pattern that emerged suggested someone who had been building toward a breakdown for weeks or months before the incident. Colonel James Mitchell arrived at the base within hours of being notified about his daughter's involvement in the incident. His military experience allowed him to understand immediately the complexity of the situation Sarah faced, both in terms of the immediate aftermath and the long-term implications for her career. His presence provided emotional support, while his knowledge of military justice systems helped guide her through the investigative process. The base commander, General Hayes, conducted a thorough review of the incident while balancing the need for justice with the reality of military operational requirements. Her preliminary findings supported Sarah's account of events and confirmed that Thompson's behavior had violated multiple regulations and criminal statutes. However, the severity of his injuries and his 20-year military record complicated the administrative and legal responses. Private Johnson's testimony proved crucial in establishing the timeline and justification for Sarah's actions. His detailed account of Thompson's initial assault and threatening behavior provided independent corroboration for Sarah's claims of self-defense and protection of subordinate personnel. Medical evidence from Johnson's examination revealed bruising and other injuries consistent with Thompson's attack. The 500 soldiers who had participated in the training exercise became witnesses to a demonstration of leadership and courage that would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. Many of them had heard the radio transmissions and seen the aftermath of the confrontation, creating a shared experience that bonded them to Sarah and reinforced their confidence in her leadership abilities. Thompson's recovery proved to be long and difficult, complicated by infections and the psychological trauma of seeing his military career end in disgrace. His behavior during rehabilitation continued to be problematic, with staff reporting aggressive outbursts and refusal to accept responsibility for the incident. The contrast between his conduct and Sarah's professionalism throughout the investigation became increasingly apparent to everyone involved. The formal military justice proceedings took months to complete as investigators examined every aspect of the incident and its contributing factors. Sarah was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing, with the investigation concluding that her actions were necessary, proportionate, and justified under the circumstances. Thompson faced court-martial proceedings for assault, conduct unbecoming, and violation of safety protocols. Sarah's reputation throughout the military justice system was enhanced rather than damaged by her handling of the incident and its aftermath. Her calm professionalism under investigation, combined with the clear justification for her actions, created a case study that would be used in military academies to teach proper conduct under extreme circumstances. Senior officers recognized her as an example of the values and capabilities they sought in military leaders. The psychological impact of the incident on Sarah was significant, but manageable due to her strong support network and professional counseling resources. Her father's guidance proved invaluable as she processed the emotional aspects of seriously injuring a fellow service member, even one whose behavior had necessitated such action. The base chaplain and mental health professionals provided additional support throughout her recovery. Thompson's medical discharge from the military was processed with administrative efficiency that reflected the clear evidence of his misconduct and unfitness for continued service. His disability rating was reduced due to the determination that his injuries resulted from his own criminal behavior rather than service-connected activities. The legal and financial consequences of his actions would follow him for years after his departure from military service. The training protocols and safety procedures at the base were reviewed and updated following the incident, though investigators concluded that no reasonable precautions could have prevented Thompson's breakdown and assault. The incident served as a reminder that human factors remain the most unpredictable element in military operations, regardless of how thorough planning and preparation might be. Sarah's promotion to major came ahead of schedule as senior leadership recognized her exceptional performance under extreme circumstances. Her handling of the Thompson incident demonstrated leadership qualities that marked her as a candidate for increased responsibility and advanced assignments. The promotion ceremony was attended by hundreds of soldiers who had witnessed her courage and professionalism during the crisis. The impact of the incident extended beyond the base where it occurred as news of Sarah's actions spread throughout the military community. Her story became an example of proper conduct under pressure and the importance of protecting subordinate personnel regardless of personal risk. Military training programs began incorporating lessons learned from her experience into their curricula. Thompson's attempts to file legal action against Sarah and the military were unsuccessful due to the overwhelming evidence of his culpability and the clear justification for her defensive actions. His civilian lawyers struggled to build a case that could overcome the documented evidence of his assault and threatening behavior. The legal system consistently supported Sarah's actions and rejected Thompson's claims of excessive force. Private Johnson's development as a soldier was positively influenced by witnessing Sarah's leadership during the crisis. Her protection of him and her professional handling of the investigation demonstrated the values and standards he sought to emulate in his own military career. He frequently cited her example when discussing leadership and moral courage with other young soldiers. The long-term medical prognosis for Thompson's leg remained uncertain even months after the incident. Despite multiple surgeries and extensive rehabilitation, his mobility was permanently limited, and chronic pain became a constant companion. The physical consequences of his actions served as a daily reminder of the choices that had ended his military career and damaged his future prospects. Sarah's relationship with the soldiers under her command was strengthened by her actions during the Thompson incident. They had witnessed her willingness to risk her own career and safety to protect one of them, creating a bond of trust and loyalty that enhanced her effectiveness as a leader. Her reputation for taking care of her people became legendary throughout the base and beyond. The base's annual awards ceremony included special recognition for Sarah's actions, with the presentation of a commendation that acknowledged her courage, leadership, and professional conduct under extreme circumstances. The award citation specifically noted her protection of subordinate personnel and her proper use of force in a life-threatening situation. Years later, Sarah would look back on the Thompson incident as a defining moment in her military career that tested every aspect of her training, character, and leadership abilities. The lessons learned from that confrontation in the forest continued to guide her decision-making and reinforce her commitment to protecting those who served under her command. Her actions that day had protected Private Johnson and demonstrated the values that made military service a noble profession. The story of Sarah Mitchell's confrontation with Master Sergeant Thompson became part of base lore, told and retold by soldiers who understood the significance of her actions. Her quick thinking, precise response, and professional conduct throughout the aftermath created a legacy that would inspire future generations of military leaders to maintain the highest standards of conduct while protecting those who depended on their leadership and courage.